Many of you were here 2 weeks ago when my wife Sheridan gave the Dharma talk. So you might remember that we have very recently had a death in our family. Our brother-in-law Jerry died a couple of weeks ago, and last night we had a very small family memorial service, and we're going to have another one on Friday. So I think in many parts, this talk isn't going to be about death, although actually I'm going to tell a story about death, so maybe that's not exactly true. But even the parts that are not about death, you know, in Asia, the Zen Buddhists handle death. That's the realm of Zen Buddhism, especially in Japan, where maybe a birth might be celebrated in a Shinto temple. Death is handled by the Buddhist priests and the Zen Buddhist priests. And I think that's because death is always a constant reminder. And many of the readings you'll read about in Zen Buddhism will have a focus on death. There's a very famous Zen phrase that says, "Time will not wait for you. Soon death. What will you do?" So in Buddhism, death is often used as a motivator. We talk about finishing the great work of life and death. What is the work of life and death? What are we supposed to be doing here? And my experience has been ever since, really, probably before I was even 20, I read this teaching about using death as your advisor. And, you know, on one hand, I can look back to myself 50 years ago and think, well, what did I know about death even? But actually, by the time I was 20, I had experienced death. And grandparents died, old friends had died. And it's always a reminder that we don't know how long we have. We think we have this infinite time. And maybe in one sense we do, but then there's a whole other sense where in a snap, it could be all over for a million different reasons. And to remember that, especially when you're a practitioner, it sharpens your focus. It sharpens your attention. What am I doing right now? What is this? In our meditation instruction, Marshall said we're primarily an inquiry practice. What am I? What is this thing we call a human being? Where does my experience come from? Why is it that I react the way I react to things? Do we know? Do we have any idea of who we really are? That's the heart of Zen practice. What am I? And it's not something that we necessarily need to think about and come to an intellectual understanding of. Zen practice is observational practice, especially in meditation. What is this? Then we actually look. We actually ask the question and allow the universe to teach us. That's Zen practice. That's Zen life. So about, let's see, when was it? On July 30th, I got a text, and I'm going to read you the text. This is a quote, and it may not be finished, but we'll get to it. So the quote said, "We can't pick and choose what we're grateful in life for. We have to be grateful for all of it, for even the things that we wish had never happened to us." Maybe I'll read that again. We can't pick and choose what we're grateful in life for. We have to be grateful for all of it, for even the things that we wish had never happened to us. So this quote intrigued me. So it was sent to me by my brother, and I went to look for a little bit more information. And it turns out it comes from a dialogue between Anderson Cooper, who's for those of you who maybe aren't in the country, who's a journalist, an American journalist, and kind of a news anchor. And he was born into a very, very, very wealthy family. His mother was Gloria Vanderbilt. So it's between Anderson Cooper and Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert, again, for those of you who may not be in America, Stephen Colbert is an entertainer. He has a late night talk show, pretty much we know now, pretty left-wing in his political affiliations. He was quite brutal on Donald Trump when he was our president. But this dialogue, it goes on for about 20 minutes. And I would kind of encourage you, if I'm interesting you with what I'm saying, to take a look at the video, because the dialogue is interesting. It turns out both Anderson Cooper and Stephen Colbert had their father die when they were 10 years old. I don't really know what the cause of death was for Anderson Cooper's father, but I know for Stephen Colbert, his father and two older brothers died in a car accident when he was 10 years old. So it was very sudden and very shocking. And it was actually Stephen Colbert who this quote was from. And they were talking about what happened to them when suddenly their father was dead when they were 10 years old. And then for Stephen Colbert, he was in a Catholic family of about 12 kids. And it was the two older brothers, just older than him, who died with his father. And there's a lot of things I can say about this, but they had a difference of opinion, or a different worldview, if you will, where Anderson Cooper was saying, when he thinks about his father's death and how it impacted him, he thinks that there's an alternative man that he would have been if his father had not died. And he often wonders about that alternative man. Who would he be? And what might he have been in his life compared to who he was now because his father died? And Stephen Colbert kind of shook his head and he said, no. It doesn't work that way. He says a man or a person is constructed out of the experiences of their life. So you can't really think of it as an alternative to something else. And basically, maybe in Zen language, he was saying, there's only this, there's no alternative. And actually, he said, this view of a constructed self, he said, I hear about this mostly from my Catholic friends and my Buddhist friends. Because in Buddhism, we do look at ourselves, our small self, our personal self, as a conditioned self. It arises out of the experiences that we have. So for both Anderson Cooper and Stephen Colbert, they had an extreme loss at 10 years old. And of course, that colored everything for them. I mean, what I know of Anderson Cooper and his relationship with his father, they were very close. His father provided a kind of stability that his mother didn't have. So he relied on that stability of his father. And when his father died, he lost that guiding rock that was really helping him in life. And I just found it interesting. Like, what is a person? Each one of us here tonight, we each have our own personality. We have our way of being. we have this phrase that I love when we do something when we don't usually do. We'll say something like, I'm not like that. I don't do that, right after we did it. So it tells me that though we think we know who we are, what we're really talking about is a construct, a social construct that we've created in order to live in this world. And it's not only that we created it, the circumstances of our lives push us in certain ways. Some of us grow up in very privileged situations. Others of us grow up without any privilege at all. And in the early years of well, it's not really the early years. I guess I'm going back to the 1990s and some of the discussions about race and privilege. One of the ways that privilege was described was it's kind of like living your life with the wind at your back. You know, you think you're moving forward at your own speed. And, you know, after you're alive for a while, you don't feel that wind behind you. And since life is a struggle for everybody, privileged or not, we focus so much on the difficulties and the obstacles. It's easy for us to leave out the privileges and the leg up that we may get. And we may discount that because we want ourselves to be seen, or we want to see ourselves in a particular way. These are random possibilities. Boy, there's probably is over 20 of us here. Each of us have had our own circumstances. And we think we remember things. We think we understand how we became what we are. But do we really? Are you surprised sometimes when somebody reminds you of something that happened between the two of you that you didn't remember? And yet it was really, often it's something very important. Maybe it was only very important for the other person. You know, we don't know really how we touch each other. We think we understand how we impact each other, but we really don't. And we think we know each other. But really, as I'm looking out on this screen, actually, what I think about you is my projection about you. It's actually not who you are. Now, hopefully, we're astute, we pay attention, we listen carefully, and there are ways to understand another person. But I know for myself, one of the critical pieces of that happening is I have to let go of my ideas. The more I have an idea of who you are, the more likely I am to try to fit you into that box. There's a phrase that sometimes gets spoken in therapy, you know, or in therapy sessions, and it would be something like, it's the people closest to you who are the most resistant to your changing. We get comfortable with the world around us, even if we're not really quite satisfied with things. It's what we know, and we find ways to navigate it. But when somebody changes, it changes the entire system. In the world of psychotherapy, there's something called systems. Well, it's systemic family therapy, but it's true for the whole world. We're all enmeshed in systems, and we rely on the systems to basically stay the same to keep us safe. And when the system shifts, that means everyone in the system has to adjust. So in our lives, we're constantly being bombarded with change, and simultaneously, we're both happy about the change or welcoming the change, but also resistant and not wanting to be in the ambiguity of not knowing. I hope this isn't too heady, because I really hope you're taking this in and really feeling it. This is just the reality of being human. It's not bad or good, but it's what we have to deal with. So, to go back to that quote, if I can find it easily. We can't pick and choose what we're grateful in life for. We have to be grateful for all of it, even the things we wish never happened to us. Many of us understand the power of gratitude, and gratitude is something that's spoken about so often these days. It's a very powerful practice to be grateful. But when I read that quote, I realized how easy it is to be grateful for what I like, but not be grateful for what I don't like. So that's picking and choosing. But all of it is the essence of our life. And imagine what a life could be like when we're grateful for all of it, that we're willing to use all of our experience as our teacher, rather than picking and choosing. I like this one, that resonates with me, so I'll do that. But I don't like that one so much, so I'm going to cut that out. I remember one time watching a one-man comedy show. This was many, many years ago at the Marsh Theater in San Francisco. And the guy was talking about picking and choosing religion. I think he was Jewish, and he was talking about picking and choosing Judaism. I like this part, so I'll do it, but I don't like that part, so I won't do it. Now, of course, we all do that. I realize I do that with Zen Buddhism. There are parts that I relate to, and there's the parts that I don't. One of the beauties now of having 3 teachers in our Sangha is we each have our own propensities. So I leave certain things out that don't really draw me, but maybe Marshall is really drawn to that. So the diversity of experience is so powerful for our finding out, what am I? And can I be grateful for all of it? Because gratitude implies a kind of joining with and an acceptance of. So can I be grateful for it? This just occurred to me, and I don't know if it fits. It's kind of a stupid story. But I sat a month of Kyolche at the Providence Zen Center in 1981. So I sat a month-long retreat, basically from 4:30 in the morning till 9:30 at night, every day for a month on a silent retreat, just sitting with myself and the group, of course. What am I? What is this? Much of the time, miserable. I mean, those things are difficult. So can I be grateful for that difficulty? So I'm looking around. Most of you don't know the Providence Zen Center very well. But at that time, the Kyolche space, the long retreat space, was in the upstairs. They had a big upstairs room. And to the right of that is a string of bathrooms. And I don't think it's still like this. But at the time, the toilets didn't flush very well. And almost every time I would walk into the bathroom, there would be a little piece of shit in the toilet. And I would instinctively gag. It was just my reaction every time. And can I be grateful for that experience? At the time, I didn't like it at all. I mean, it was a visceral gag every single time. And yet, 42 years later, I'm telling you this story. I'm not able to tell you this story because it was some beautiful thing or something that was commonplace. Every time I went into that bathroom, my mind was hit. I saw myself react instinctually. What am I? What is this? So I never would have expected talking about this. Fast forward 40 years, we have, some of you have seen them on the screen. We have two very sweet kitty cats in our house. One of them is a little bit, I don't know what to call her, but she likes to shit on the floor. Sorry, I'm using the vulgar language. I probably could say poop, but this is my way. There she is. She's the culprit right there in Sheridan's screen. So I'm very, very often the first one in our household to wake up in the morning. And most every morning, not every morning, but probably 4 days a week, I met somewhere, whether it's in the bathtub or under the kitchen table, with cat poop. I'll be nicer. And I don't gag anymore. I have a reference point of 41 years ago to today. Had I not had that reference point, I wouldn't be able to recognize the change. This is an insignificant thing on some level. But my point is, we're always changing. And if we don't have the markers of our struggle, along with the markers of our good fortune and our happiness, we don't really know ourselves. We have to include everything. My judgment of good and bad, like and dislike, is an overlay on whatever it is. Zen practice is about getting to the thing itself, not my response to it. Can I be present enough and not know enough to be able to really meet this moment? There's a reason we talk about a don't know mind. There's a reason we talk about the importance of not knowing. Instead of using not knowing, Suzuki Roshi used the phrase beginner's mind. He said a beginner's mind is a mind that's wide and open. It's curious and it wants to see. But an expert's mind is closed. I already know that. I've seen it 100 times. I don't have to look again. And as we get older, we get more stuck in our belief system. And we all need ways to shake ourselves out of our belief system. And possibly this sense of being grateful for what we don't like is a way to shake ourselves up. Yeah, of course, we're going to have that pushing away feeling. I don't want that. Go, stop. Don't do that. That makes me uncomfortable. But with awareness, it's always the key. With the ability to become present, to find our breath, to feel our body. There's a reason we work with our lower abdomen. It's a way to find stability and to have a foundation to stay with that which makes us uncomfortable. And unless we're dealing with our discomfort, we're actually not practicing. Craving what we like and rejecting what we don't like is the path of suffering. Embracing, I'm not pushing this so far as encouraging, but embracing what we're uncomfortable with or what we don't like and working with it. Maybe by really staying with it, we can find ways to work with it and change things. But if we push away and ignore, then we miss the most valuable teachers we're ever going to have. Our life is our teacher, but if we're not aware, if we're not present, then we miss the teachings all the time. So there's a lot of formality. We don't see it so much online here on Wednesday night, but when one goes to the Zen Center, or if you go to a temple in Korea or in Japan or in China, or really temples all over the world at this point, you'll find a kind of formality and a structure. And then practice means be with that structure. Everybody's going to find they like certain things and they don't like other things. Our natural way is to try to grab what we like and push away what we don't like. But practice means meet it right now where you are. Stay with it as long as you can. And then when it gets too much, step back. Find a place that's comfortable and then observe what just happened. I just stepped back. What is that? What was it that repelled me? What was it that I was afraid of? Keep engaging. Don't leave it. Practice is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The parts of our life that we're awake means we're present. The word Buddha means awake. Can we be awake right now, right where we are? Not only in the face of what we feel comfortable with and like, but with what we don't feel comfortable with and dislike. What am I? What is this? So I'm not going to go into it because I don't have time, but I was going to talk a little bit about Zen Master Seung-san's tagline. And I'm just going to say it, and then I'll open it up for questions. He would end almost every Dharma talk he ever gave with the line, only go straight, don't know. Try, try, try for 10,000 years nonstop. And then as I was thinking about this line, he would throw in a little carrot. He'd say, soon get enlightenment. That perked us all up. But you know what? If you only go straight, don't know, try, try, try for 10,000 years, help save all beings from suffering. That is the path of enlightenment. You don't have to get it. You live it. Stay awake, stay present, and engage directly with your life. That is the Zen Buddha way.